Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so thankful that you're here. Listen, each and every time somebody takes the time to jump on, I feel a responsibility. I have true respect for their time and for your time. And so I always endeavor to bring tremendous value. And the person that I'm going to introduce you to now, Michael Porro, who is the general manager and managing director at Underworld in Louisville, is going to make my job easy today, because if my goal, if my objective, if my intention is to bring you value, you're about to get more value than you could possibly imagine. If you're driving, be safe, maybe start that voice recorder, or maybe take some notes if you're sitting down. But I just know wherever you are, whatever you're doing, your life is about to get a whole lot better. Please meet Michael Porro. Michael, thank you for time. Thank you for taking the time to.
Hey, it's my pleasure, David. No pressure, right?
No pressure whatsoever. So listen, I need massive value in the first 60 seconds. All right, so here we go. I know this is something that you do on a daily basis. I want to start with this. And you've been in the retail automotive space for how long, Michael?
I started in November of 1978.
1978. What made you jump into retail?
I needed a job and I needed a car. And back in those days, they offered the 3Ds, a draw, a demo, and a day off.
That's right. Yes, and a day off. It meant singular day off. Michael, where were you with that first job? Where was that dealership located?
It was St. Clair Dodge, and it was in the south end of south side of Pittsburgh. And
you're from
it was a great proving ground. You know, they had just introduced the Omni, the Dodge Omni, and the quality was the quality was so good at Chrysler that 50% of them had Omni on one side and Horizon on the other. we would get Dodge Magnums with Cordoba interiors.
I love that, though, because you were able to sell your customers two cars at once. I mean,
well, I'll tell you something, David. It was the best education a young man like myself could ever get, because I didn't know anything. And then, you know, and they had no training. My training was, we got a VHS over there, okay, and we got these training tapes. What I want you to do, kid, go over there and watch them. And it was Joe Girard.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I'll tell you something. I could actually get on stage and do Joe's routine. You know, what's it all about? Money. I mean, I did everything Joe said to do, and it worked. And then my dealer used to leave the automotive news laying around. And then after about 6 months, I'm thinking, man, I started looking at the automotive news, and I see where, you know, General Motors is number 1, Ford is number 2, Oldsmobile's number 3. And I'm a city guy. I live in the inner city, not in the South Hills. All the people I know are in any city. I'm thinking, well, I got to go get a job at a Chevrolet store, you know, a Ford store, Oldsmobile store. So I put on my best clothes and I started interviewing on my days off. And the Chevrolet store decided not to hire me. The Ford store decided not to hire me. The Oldsmobile store hired me. I was the very first sales associate they hired that was not married. Back then, what they did, and I highly recommend that we should do it today, is that they wanted a commitment from a wife that the husband was coming to a job that was unlike the 9-to-5 job. You know, back in the day, you know, we worked 9 to 9, Monday, Tuesday, you got Wednesday off. You were 9 to 9 on Thursday, 9 to 6 on Saturday, and thank God in Pennsylvania was the Blue Laws. We were off on Sunday. So it was very bright, because it's like, you know, I'm going to bring David Spisak in. He's going to give me a commitment. He's going to give me his best. Then he's going to go home and his wife's going to say, well, honey, the Jones are going to go have dinner on Thursday night. Well, honey, I have to work Thursday night. And then, you know, and then you go on and on and on. Well, hey, listen, we're going to go on a picnic this Saturday. No, I got to work on Saturday. So, I mean, let's face it, our industry is totally different. I always use the analogy, it's more like the military than any other organization. And that's why when, Jim Collins says the most important thing is getting the right person on the bus and getting them in the right seat. Man, I tell you what, I mean, that's spot on. And that's what they did back then.
It's still probably one of my favorite, if not maybe my favorite business book. I love the very first line in that book. Michael says, "Good is the enemy of great." And I've shared 100 times from Jim's book. And, it's interesting, when people think good is good enough, great is off the table. It's just automatic table. They don't even consider it. It's fascinating to me. I've been in this business 43, going on 44 years. You've been on another 3 years beyond where I am. And one of the many things that fascinates me in this business is how many different roads there are to get to where somebody accomplishes, going from being a salesperson, receptionist, valet, porter, technician, where they have that opportunity to ultimately become a dealer. And as you are today in Louisville, Kentucky, and you run a spectacularly successful organization, number one in the region, but you had to have help. Nobody does this alone along the way. And so what's interesting also is your first mentor turned out to be Joe Girard. He wasn't even that's in person. And what I find important about that and more noteworthy about that is because there is a lot of people in businesses, including dealerships, to where if they don't have a great mentor within their organization, they stagnate, they rust, they go to this level and then they just stop and they say, well, I don't have that person. But the reality is, you had it back then by virtue of a VHS tape, but everybody else in the store had that same access. Chances are the majority of them didn't do it to the same level. They didn't repeat it over and over again. They didn't make it to where they knew it so well that when somebody came up and asked you a question, you didn't even have to think about it. So that first mentor impacted you. I'm curious, what was the first person that really impacted you in the car business? That's one question.
There was a
second question is this. First one is, who was the first person you remember that had a dramatic impact on your career? And the second question is, when exactly was the defining moment where you said, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life?
My first mentor was a gentleman by the name of Jim Berg. Jim introduced me to automotive profit builders. George Libben was the founder of it. I had the opportunity to meet George, and it laid out a practical path to follow. I'm a systems guy that later became a data guy, and I fought the system, David. I fought the system because I thought I was God's gift to the car business. I became the number one guy at the Chrysler store by doing a lot of things wrong, and I fought the system. And Jim put up with me, and Jim did not allow me to do it wrong. And I got to the point where we had 10 steps on the road to the sale, and I'll tell you what, I still teach it today. We had a log book. This was before the CRM. This was our CRM, and inside the book it had the 10 qualifiers. So when we would go to the desk, remember this is back in the late 70s, early 80s. We had an office on the showroom floor that had one-way mirror. So the desk manager would sit in the desk office and he could see the showroom floor. The clients can see him. I didn't smoke at the time. I would walk into the desk office. They had a fan on the ceiling because it was like a 50-feet ceiling in a big showroom, and they smoked all day long. And I'd go in there. I felt like I was working in a steel mill. And you would go in. We had to line up on a bench, and he would go in there. This guy was brilliant. There was no computers back then. He didn't even run a tape. He had a computer, and we had a desk log. And he would come in, and we'd have to answer the questions. And he would go through the qualifiers. And if you didn't do it, he'd send you back. And then you had to go back in line again. And then you had to look like an idiot in front of your peers. But one thing Jim did every day was he set the stage every day. We had a meeting every day, and we would go through the first qualifier, the second qualifier, the third qualifier. We would go through our playbook from page 1 to page 17, then back to page 1 to page 17. We knew the plan so well. It was unbelievable. And he would not allow you to do it wrong. Basically, it was his way or the highway. And answering your second question, I started doing it. I started making a beeline. I would take my logbook, I'd go into the bench, literally go into a stall, and I would go through the qualifiers, and I would go back to the client, and I would ask the questions. And when I got into the desk office, he and I were in sync, and it just worked. And I went from selling 12 cars a month, 25 cars a month, 30 cars a month. And God only knows how many cars I was single at the time, so man, 30 cars. Man, I'll never forget my first full year there. I heard my mom and dad doing taxes. My mom says, my dad name was Mike. He said, Mike, she says, we had a good year. We made 35,000. Well, shit, I made 55,000 that year. And I was guilty. So I went out and I bought my mom a new kitchen. I got my dad a new TV, got him cable. I stayed in the business because I seen the income opportunity. And then I seen the guys that I was working for, and I wanted to aspire to be one of those guys. And I worked my butt off to get there. I became the top sales associate. The dealer bought a GMC franchise. And I'll never forget it because our general manager would only come to sales meetings if it was good news or bad news. So he comes in, it was in October. And October was always my best month in the automobile business in Pittsburgh because everybody wanted to go buck and doe hunting. And all I wanted to do was go client hunting. So it was in November. He comes in, he says, listen, we bought a GMC franchise. He said, I'm looking for volunteers to work in the GMC franchise. Well, we were a Honda and Oldsmobile. Honda lit up in 79. You didn't sell them, you just wrote orders.
Yeah.
So I had at that time, I had about 10 orders that were coming in that month. I had a nice clientele for Oldsmobile, and they were going to guarantee you another $2,500. But I was the only person to raise their hand. And then I met another mentor. Met a gentleman by the name of Bob Collis. Bob came from number one Cochran in Monroeville. They're one of the largest dealers in Pennsylvania. And he was the truck manager. And he turned me on to a system called Truck Marketing Institute. And it was frame learning. One of the best things that I ever did and I became a truck expert. And then Bob decided he wanted to go back to Cochran, and they gave me the truck manager job. Well, it was in a little building that used to be their tire store. So I convinced the Oldsmobile rep to allow me to display a pickup truck on the showroom floor. And then what I did was I ended up moving my team back up to the Oldsmobile Honda showroom. And then the managers in the store basically delegated me their jobs. Next thing you know, I'm handling the Honda allocation. Then I'm ordering all the Oldsmobiles. And then at that time, I was still putting in 80% of the desk time. So they basically delegated me their jobs. And then we used to do annual reviews. And we had a new general manager came in. He was our comptroller. His name was Carl Prince. God bless his soul. He and I still communicate to this day. And he says, kid, he said, what do you want to do this year? I said, I want to start getting paid for what I do. He said, well, what the F do you mean? And I said, I'm doing this, that, and the other. He had no clue. So he gave me a shot, made me the general sales manager. And all the weak guys that I was working with, I had the pleasure of firing them. I gave them an opportunity. I said, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it the right way. Because they felt like they were entitled. I'm as strong as my weakest link, and that's not a cliche. I mean, that's the way I look at it every day. I mean, as you know, I have a morning thread. I send it out. As soon as I wake up, the first time my thought is better every day.
Yeah.
And I articulate that, and I live that. But these guys, they became complacent. But we became the number one Oldsmobile store in Pennsylvania. We were the number one Honda dealer in our zone. And I'll tell you what, I just duplicated what Jim taught me.
So I got to ask you, you come in, you take charge, you took initiative, you watched the tapes, you did well. You put your head down, great work ethic, ended up meeting a couple of people that were instrumental in your career, and things seemed like they went well, and you were able to continue to move upward. I'm curious if in the last 45 years, is there any period of time where, frankly, you hit the wall, where things didn't work, where at any time you second-guessed your decision to be in the car business, or you gave thought to maybe doing something else. Anytime that you kind of just started questioning yourself because you weren't able to have that level of results or performance?
David, not really. I love coaching. I mean, I just absolutely love it. And I contemplated, I was approached by automotive profit builders to go to work for them. And I just couldn't see myself living out of a suitcase. I just couldn't do it. I mean, that's the close, but I still wanted to stay in the business. I met some really brilliant guys. Dave Wallace became one of my mentors. Dave ran automotive profit builders. And then George put his son in business. David went to work, and he made JM Lexus the largest Lexus dealer in the country. And he was a phenomenal mentor. I mean, I could pick up the phone and call him anytime. We were an automotive profit dealer. We would have weekly conference calls. And basically, I just wanted to know what I didn't know. And, and back then, I have a hard time, like when I go to 20 groups and when they talk about, how bad their salespeople are. So I'm like, what's your bad salesperson doing? And then it's like, they don't know. If you ask me what my bad salesperson's doing, I know exactly what he's doing. He's either not talking to enough clients, he's not getting enough demos, he's not getting enough write-ups, he's not getting enough offers. He's not, so we could pinpoint where the opportunity for gain is. And APB was doing that back in 78.
I remember I was using them in the 80s. They were out of Framingham, Mass, weren't they? Is my memory serve me right?
I'm sorry, Dick?
Wasn't it located in Framingham, Massachusetts?
Yes, it is. Yep.
I remember that. Good guy from 35 years ago. Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit. You mentioned, you started in 78 and you held up that daily planner and the 10 steps of the qualifiers. Mm-hmm. I did a post about a week ago or so, and it just exploded. And my post was that we're stuck at 10. In the 80s, 70s, we were selling 9, 10 cars a month. In the 80s, 10 cars a month. Lo and behold, and I would tell people back then, it looked like a calculator, but it was a computer, but it looked like a calculator, and you'd put certain numbers in one after one, and then it would spit out this long tape, and you would hold that tape down on your desk. It's curling up, hold it down, and you'd copy the numbers, handwrite them on a law contract, the retail contract. We figure out leases in our head. We calculated all that in our head, whether it's open and closed end lease and so forth. And then in the 90s, Michael, we went from, you remember back in the late 70s, 80s, we had systems called HON and Oakleaf. You remember those?
Yes.
And then the first real DMS systems, was ADP, and we had, there was UCS, Reynolds, those types. And they came along, and then later in the 90s, a few more years later, here comes CRMs. And since then, technology has evolved, expanded, gotten more robust. CRMs have done the same thing. But yet, in the 90s, we were stuck at 10, 2000s, 10, 2010s. Average sales per salesperson per month, 10. And as we sit here today, it's actually, depending on where you are in the brand, it's somewhere around 9.5 or 10. My question to you is, it occurs to you, it has to occur to you, that while the technology has advanced and improved, the people have not. What is it that allowed somebody in the 80s, 70s, and 80s without any technology to do 10, 15, 20 cars a month, when we have people that have more technology? You've got AI, you've got all this efficiency, you've got data mining, you've got CRMs, you've got all these things. And yet the vast, vast majority of the salespeople in this country still struggle and don't even sell 10 cars a month. Every store I work with has people selling less than 10 cars a month. Why is that?
Well, I don't have any 10-car salespeople, but I'll tell you why. If you permit it, you promote it. If you permit having people that sell 10 cars, then you're promoting 10-car salespeople. McCain Oldsmobile, we didn't have any 10-car salespeople. Our owner did not like it, like the sales associates to be on the showroom floor. So there was one way in and one way out the front door. We had a hostess, and the only way that you got your name on the up list. I hate to use that word because I hate ups, but the client list, right? Was if you had a manager confirmed appointment. You didn't get on the list until you had an appointment. And then we had a big motivator board, and we had a room off the showroom. It was called the lower sales office. It was a couple steps off the showroom. That's why they called lower. And it was like a secretarial pool. And all we did was we sat in there and we did it. We did our follow-up and our prospecting. And then, I remember I used to have one of those little mirrors, the sun visors used to get at an auto store. I had one on the wall, because I'd have my tie untied, and we stood it up. You didn't come to work. You looked good. And we prospected, and it was an option of our employment. It was a condition of our employment. If you didn't prospect, you didn't work there. If you didn't follow up your client, you didn't work there. And, if you couldn't sell 15 cars, you didn't work there. And there was no compromise. And I think what happens is you go to stores and they have people that sell 10 cars a month. It's poor leadership. And we just don't permit it. And because, let's face it, the leaders set the pace. And if you have somebody in your organization, David, that's not an asset, then they're a liability. Yes.
Yeah.
Why would you want to invest in a liability?
I'm always fascinated and confounded, I should say, when I see a dealership that is not producing the results that they desire, the results they intended to achieve, and they don't achieve them, and then they don't achieve them, and they don't achieve them, they don't achieve them. But interestingly, they have a mechanism that allows them to be, somewhat delusional. I'll just say they have a rational optimism. They suffer from that. There's very few people in dealerships that suffer from a lack of self-esteem. Most sales managers would readily say, hey, we were off to a slow start, but don't worry, we'll make it up in the last 5 days. Wait a minute, you didn't get it done in the first 25, but you're going to somehow ramp it up in the last 5 days. It's a really interesting situation. And I've asked more and more people this question lately, is that if what you're doing continues to render a result that is not up to par with your expectations or frankly what you need, I struggle to understand the level of commitment and loyalty that you have to the very thing, the very program that keeps failing you over and over and over again. Yet, the vast, vast majority of sales managers and salespeople have that exact situation. You bring up something very important. If you permit it, you promote it as it pertains to low and ineffective salespeople. What in your mind defines a highly successful, productive sales manager who has the type of impact that you need them to have and that you think that every sales manager should have on their team? What are the defining characteristics of a highly successful, productive sales manager that's able to not just do the work they need to do, but to lift their team up and grow the people that work for them?
Well, we got to make sure that we hire the right person, number one. And number two, we got to make sure that when we hire them, that we give them all the necessary knowledge that they need to get the job done. It's got to be documented, and it has to be repeated. I don't want to get political, but the reason we're the strongest nation currently in the world right now, it isn't because of our industry, because we don't produce anything anymore. It's not because we have the best and brightest. We don't. It's because of our military. And people fear us. But our military has one of the best processes in the world. You wake up in the morning, you make your bed. After you make your bed, you go and eat, and then you exercise, and then you march. And then when you march, it's not optional how you march. It's left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And then they have the best processes, and it's not optional. So, I think what you do is you get the right person on the bus, get them in the right seat. And then what you do is educate them. And we get, and you got to education and coaching's every day. You know, I told you earlier, I was from Pittsburgh. I remember when my father would take us out to St. Vincent's and watch the Steelers during Chuck Noll. We'd go to spring training. I'll never forget it. And I use it in my training to this day. Chuck Noll would line up all the players, first day of training camp. Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Frederick Fuqua, Rocky Bleier, Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Joe Green. I mean, Mel Blood, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert. And he would line them up and say, Mr. Bradshaw, this is the football. Mr. Bleier, this is the football. And he would go through and he says, gentlemen, the team that's going to win the Super Bowl this year is the team that blocks and tackles the best. Now, that's why he had 4, because they mastered the basic fundamentals of the sale. Our business is really simple. Really, sales is extremely simple. There's only really 3 things you need to do. You got to make sure you ride, you select, and serve price. I mean, every salesperson in every organization is so concerned about selling cars. You have to sell yourself, get people to like you, get them to pick out a car and ask them to buy it. It's really that simple. And so I don't know why we make things complicated. You go back to technology. Technology hasn't sold one extra car, David. I mean, think about it. It's crazy.
Has it, and I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that we should move away from technology. We absolutely should not. But what I am saying is, as some of these things have come into our showroom floor, has it in some way weakened organizations, weakened or allowed them to have the mindset that because of this, somehow they don't have to work as hard, focus as much, train as much, develop themselves? In other words, do you think that technology, it's kind of like, if I buy you a Peloton, Michael, and you don't use it, you're an out of shape guy with a Peloton, aren't you?
Yep.
And the only time your life is going to change is actually if you get on that great piece of technology. Otherwise, nothing changes whatsoever. And I think it's very much the same way with the CRMs. I'm not vilifying the CRMs. I'm certainly not vilifying tech at large. Mm-hmm. But too many times I think we go in and we buy something, we bring it in our store, we unwrap it, we plug it in, so to speak, turn it on, we go, okay, this should do it. Man, we're just going to wait for all these leads to come in. Doesn't work that way. You have to participate. Agreed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But David, I think anybody can be successful in this business, but it all starts with a plan. You have to have a plan. You go into most stores and say, well, so what's your plan? And then when they look at you like you have 3 ads. I mean, you're here, again, I'll show you my age. Plan your work your plan. I mean, it's really simple. I mean, I learned these things at a very, very early age. But how many people just...
Cliches, I always say cliches are cliches because they're true.
Yes.
They serve the test of time. And so when you bring stuff up like that, which, obviously makes my mind race back, and I remember those same things, work your plan, plan your work. When you talk about Chuck Noll with blocking and tackling, I mentioned to you earlier this week about the great coach Nick Saban, who's won 7 national championships. His peers, 95% have never won 1. He's won 7. How is that possible? Well, it wasn't technology. It wasn't, some newfangled technology or some special system. When you talk to the guy, it is blocking and tackling. When you talk to the guy, it actually starts with people, right? When you talk to the guy, he says, you won't find one sign in all of Alabama, not in the training room, not in the weight room, not in the meeting rooms, that says, go win a championship. But there's all kinds of things that say, here's what it takes to be a champion. And I heard that and I said, wow, how many sales managers do we have to this day, Michael, say, hey, we need to sell some cars. Hey, you got Michael, I need you to sell some cars. And if I like them, I'm sitting there going, David, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but you may be a genius. I come here every day. I never thought of selling a car, but I could see how that could increase my income. Thank you. You've changed my life. It's like, what are we doing? But yet they spend no time teaching them how to be a champion, how to be a spectacularly successful salespeople, as you said, how to develop relationships, right? How to master questions, how to do a better job of listening to your clients so you could better understand how to solve the problem that they have. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, but but when he's, when he's on a solo type thing, it's an all the time thing. I mean, what does it take? A bad plan is better than no plan at all. So if the typical car guy just had a plan and he came in and he taught it every day, he's going to be more successful than probably 9 out of 10 guys in this town. And it just concentrate on that. But if you know how long I've been in this business, I just told you earlier, I guarantee you that I could pass a lie detector test. In 1981, when I finally got it, and I started doing it right, I woke up every morning. I never thought about selling cars. God is my witness. And you could, I'll bet all the tea in China. Look me up to a lie detector and say, Mike, since 1981, have you ever sold a car? And I'd say no, because I was never interested in selling a car. All I wanted to do was get people to like me, get them to pick out a car and ask them to buy it. And if they said no, it was a TO. That's it. So I did. And then guess what? When I didn't have my hands on a client, I had my hands on a phone. I was smiling and dialing. I would start with contacting my unsold clients. And then what I would do is I would start prospecting. So until I built a clientele, they gave me orphan clients and I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I just did it. Then, when I got promoted, it was like, hey, can you do this with 5 more people? Yeah. Next thing you know, it's 10. Next thing you know, I'm running the place.
So Michael, you, and I want to circle back because you're tying a lot of great things together. And I shared at the top of the hour, I was absolutely confident you were going to deliver massive value. You already have done that. And we still have some time left to get in some extra value. And here's something that I believe that a lot of people really want to understand. I mean, out of 365 days a year, how many days would you say that there's a dealer saying, I can't find good people? How many times do you hear that?
With 3 out of 365 days?
Yeah.
I'd say 365 days.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, you don't find great people, Dave. You make them.
Okay. Thank you. Here's where I'm going. So I said, okay. So this, I can't find them. I can't find them. I can't find them. I kind of think that's analogous to the technology. I posted it during NADA.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, yeah. So
I just tell yourself you can't do it. You're right.
If we're, when we're at Dallas for NADA, I'm watching all these people run up and walk up and down the red carpet and looking at this booth and that product and that solution. There's a lot of good things, but I call them silver bullet seekers, right? They're looking for something they could buy this that's going to change their life. And I posted during that week that your dealership's not a chia pet. You can't just buy something and add water and it's going to magically happen. It all relies on people. The foundation of any great organization is people. It doesn't matter if you're Apple or Tesla or Amazon or NVIDIA or anything else. If you have a great organization, or if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 49ers, those great organizations, every single one of them, academic organizations, they are based on a foundation of great human beings and having the right people. You said, Jim Collins said, get the right people on the bus and put them in the right seat, meaning where they have the ability to use their strength to do what they love to do and what they're great at doing every day. So when it comes to that part of the business, you just said something I think that's going to bring massive value. You said, interestingly enough, we have to stop looking for them and we have to start developing them, creating them. Can you touch on that a bit?
I'll use myself. I mean, Joe Girard got me started, but then I met Jim Bird, and Jim Bird taught me the 10 steps on the road to sale. He made sure that I did it every day. He taught me how to follow up clients, and he made sure I did it every day. And then he told me I had a prospect every day, and it was not optional. And then, I fought it. And then, when I had that aha moment, it's like, this stuff really works, you know? And now I just want to do more of it, right? And I don't do anything different with my associates. I mean, as you know, I do internal leadership coaching in my store. I read an article that was like mind blowing to me. It stipulated that the average adult, regardless of their educational background, be it a GED, a high school education, a BS, an MS, always up to PhD, I think it was like 73% of them will never read a non-fictional book the rest of their lives. Well, how the hell are you going to get better every day? I don't any better day. I mean, I read every day. And as you know, our good friend Sandy Schramme calls himself the solutionist. I kind of like think of myself as the simplest. I keep stuff easy. I like to take complicated stuff and make it easy. My processes are so simple a caveman can do. I never give anybody more than 3 tasks on each. If I want you to do A, it has 3 stages. 1, 2, 3. If it's B, it's 4, 5, 6. C, 6, 7, 8. That's it. So if you can lay, like when a coach gets on the sideline, the coach has the game plan, the quarterback has it on say. I mean, everybody knows the play. I mean, as long as they know the play, but they don't wait till Sunday to practice. They go out there and do their best. I mean, the game's won on Friday night. You know what I mean? And then you can't overtrain your people. So I mean, I went into coaching because I forced them to read now, because what we do is we'll go over a book. Right now we're completing the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership through John Maxwell, and we do it in a forum. So we break it down into 4 groups. I've got 31 leaders in my organization, and we break it down into a morning session on Wednesday and an afternoon session, and we do the same thing on Friday. And what I do is when we do the testing, they never know when they're going to get called on. So it forces them to read because it's peer pressure. They don't want to look bad in front of their peers.
Sure.
But we've gotten better. Last year we were the number 1 OEM in the state of Kentucky. Now that probably isn't impressive to most people listening, but we've got 3 Ford factory stores in our town. Everybody and their mother qualifies for an X plan. If Ford ever wanted to make money, all they'd have to do is go back and audit their dealers on these X plans. Right? But that's for another video. But we have a Toyota plant that's 35 minutes from us. That they have a very robust employee program. Honda does not, and we outsell everybody. My associates think I'm crazy because every day I come in and ask for more, but I know that one day when I come in and I don't get more, I'm going to get less. Life is a compound factor. You see where they're getting better every day or we're getting worse. There's no, I'm going to stay in the same position. It doesn't work that way. So I'm just going to do today what I did yesterday.
That your competitors are getting better. The landscape is shifting, the economy is shifting, the people are shifting. So if anybody stays the same, it's just like if you go back to the sports analogy, if the Steelers back then won the Super Bowl and the very next year, they said, we're going to use the exact same game plan for every single game, they would have likely never even made the playoffs because everything else around them shifted. And it's amazing. It's going back to what we were just touching on earlier. It's amazing how susceptible human beings are. We are to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I posted not too long ago about the difference between a groove and a rut. Physically, they're the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's a ridge, right? But if life is going great and you're hitting your numbers, you're in a groove. And if things are tough and you can't do anything right and you've had a tough month or week or year, I'm in a rut. It's the same thing. But the difference between the two is having the wisdom to know that, hey, if what I'm doing is not working, maybe I need to not do that. I don't know what I need to do, but it's not that. And what you've said a couple of times there's brilliance in it. You mentioned that you're simple, but there's brilliance in simplicity, because the reality is when things aren't going right, go back to simple, right? And so
What gets done?
if you go back to simple, which is the blocking and the tackling, which is the prospecting, picking up phone calls, developing yourself. The top CEOs in the country, top performing CEOs, best companies in the country, average number of books read per year, nonfiction, 60. Average human, not even one. So if you happen to be a business owner, you're trying to compete with somebody who's read 60 books from the best of the best, how do you compete? Why would you even expect to compete, right?
David, you're 100% right. It's so simple. I'll tell you what I do. I wake up in the morning, I read 10 pages. Before I go to bed, I read 10 pages. So I'm reading what? I'm reading 20 pages a day, right? Well, the average book is 250 pages. Do the math. I wish I was in my office, the house we were filming. I have a yearly bookshelf in my family room, and then I have a library down in my basement. My goal last year was to read 40 books. I read 41. I mean, how are you going to get better? I mean, really, how else can you get better? I think when you decide when you decide you don't want to get better, I think it's time to just hang it up.
I agree.
My partner asked me when I was planning on retiring. I said never. I said he has to throw me out. I'm going to be like this when I leave. Why would I plan on losing? I think, and I'll do disrespect to people who retire. I mean, but to me, mentally, it's giving up. I'm not willing to get up. I'm actually in better shape now than I was 20 years ago. And they say you can't turn back the clock. I have turned back the clock. I have an algorithm. I have an onboard computer. I'm such a data guy. I don't trust anything that I think. I don't trust Mike Porro. I don't. So Michael has fired Mike Porro. At night, rather than watching TV, I read a book. Rather than eating bad food, rather than going home and laying on the couch, I go to the gym. It's just, everybody has an opportunity, but it's just a mindset. I am going to get better every day. Little words you talk my socials, little words turn me off. Like, I'm going to try. Well, good luck with that. Could you imagine if Nike's slogan was just try it?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, just do it.
At least
there's
try.
A brilliant man. I highly recommend everybody on this podcast to listen. Well, look at Art Williams and do it. Watch that video. I watch that video every morning. I guarantee if that video doesn't inspire you when you wake up in the morning, you're not living. You don't have a pulse. Phenomenal.
I love
this guy started out as a high school football coach, and in 10 years, he started selling more life insurance than Prudential and Allstate combined. And I'll tell you, David, if you haven't seen it, you gotta watch it.
I'm going to go over that right after this podcast. Michael, let's shift again as we get up into the fourth order, so to speak, of our conversation. During the course of your career, I remember in the early 80s, our interest rates were in the 20 percentile range, 2022, 23. Home mortgage, 15, 16, 17%. I remember I bought my first house using, I was able to assume a VA loan that was at a low 12.9%. People are freaking out over a 6-7% mortgage today. We were paying 12, 13, 14, 15% back then. Of course, prices were also a whole lot less.
Gas shortages. Thanks to the late, great Jimmy Carter. Yeah.
So then 1987 comes along, and you mentioned October was your best month, but October was Black Monday in 1987. We had the oil embargoes. We've had those a few times. We had, obviously, 9/11 tragically occurred and changed everything. We had 2008, the Great Recession in 2008. When things go bad, when things externally out of your control start to go off the rails. And I ask this question because for a lot of dealers today, it's been a little bit of a rude awakening, or a lot of a rude awakening in the last 6, 12, 18 months, depending on your franchise. It's not the same. You're not in the pandemic anymore. I mean, who would have thought in our lifetimes that somebody would have ever imagined a global pandemic? And as astonishing as that would be, even more astonishing is there's people out there that are right about now are praying for another one. Because of a pandemic, the best years of their life was not due to training. It wasn't due to a changed regimen. It wasn't due to their paying attention and learning and reading 60 books a year. It was due to a disease and somebody who made a poor decision to not commit 12 months ahead for chips. So we end up with a disease followed by a chip shortage. And that happened to take net profit for dealerships from $1 million to 2.1 to 4.5 to 6.5. Well, the clock has struck 12. And now things are going back the other way. And all of the things that conspired, interest rates, staffing, employment costs, advertising, floor plan, that conspired to make us more profitable have now flipped sides, and they're now applying downward pressure. You've been through some things, Michael. You've been, as good as life has been, thanks to your hard work, you've been through the 87 Black Monday. You've been through the Great Recession. You've been through 9/11. And you've been exactly where you are now. What do you tell people that have never been through any kind of a downturn or recession, which is anybody under the age of 37 or any GM under 45? What do you tell your team? What do you tell your troops? What would you say to people listening? What do you do today, right now, when things are hitting the fan? External is not favorable. And how do I keep my team engaged? How do we keep our numbers up? How do we figure out how to survive? And better yet, how to succeed?
Well, I was smiling because I remember those days. You know, when interest rates were 21%, 12 at
12 out.
I didn't know, David, I didn't know any better. I was taught to get people to like you, get them to pick out a car and ask them to buy it. And the guys that were so blinded by that were smarter than me, they weren't talking to clients. They weren't blocking and tackling. They weren't prospecting. They weren't following clients up, and they really weren't even. They allowed me to prosper because I was able to talk to more clients. Therefore, I closed more deals. And here's the thing: is I had a dealer asked me, you know, what was my plan? What's your plan? I said, I'm not going to participate. See, my process will work in good times and bad times. I mean, in bad times, people have to like you. They need to pick out a car, and you need to ask them to buy it. In good times, people got to like you. They got to pick out a car, and you have to ask them to buy it. If they say no, then you turn it over to a manager, get a second opinion. If they say no to that, you put it back in the day, you used to put them in your book until they buy or die. Today, you put it in your CRM. I mean, it's really simple. It's basic fundamentals. I mean, football, for example, they still have 11 people on offense, 11 people on defense. Yes, so they still got to play offense and defense, right? You know, Lombardi used to say that we only have 4 plays. Everybody knows what we're going to do, but everybody on the Green Bay Packers knew their position and their assignments better than everybody else. That's all I want to do. I want to make sure that my people know exactly what I expect, know exactly how to do it, and I want them to want more because I'm going to keep asking for more. And then when you become complacent, it's time to hang up the towel. And that's not in me. That card's not in my deck. You know, I mean, that's why I reach out to brilliant people like you, you know, and you guys like John Traver, to just name a few. I'm leaving here and I'm going to a mastermind group this evening. I want to sit down and I'm going to smoke a cigar and drink a couple of bourbons with guys that are much smarter than me. You know, and I tell you something, I read this long ago, and I know it's a cliche, but your network is your network. What I want to do is I want to surround myself with people that are a lot smarter than me. And I want to know what I want to know. And if I'm not hitting the target, I want to know why. And I want to know what I can do better. But, numbers don't lie. I mean,
I was talking to a dealer a couple of weeks ago, and this has happened a number of times, especially as we have entered into this downturn where, I'll be talking to him about some opportunities or different strategies, and I've shared some of those strategies with you, and I'm so delighted that they've worked so well for you and your team. But I share those same type of strategies, and they say, "No, we're good. We're good." Dave, we do that. We've been doing something like that for a long time. I was doing that years ago, and we're doing all the right things. And I didn't know. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how can I be polite and diplomatic, not punch this person in the face, but just kind of wake up call. And so, you know what I said to him? I said, your numbers beg to differ with you. Like, your numbers don't agree that you're doing everything right. Your numbers don't agree. They're not buying in that you're doing these new strategies or executing. To your point, you're not the Green Bay Packers. Maybe you know the plays, but they're not being executed. And I think it's such a critical time right now to really focus. I was saying to somebody just a day or so ago, I said, you know what I've learned? Show me any great salesperson, and the difference between them is what they do when they're not with a client. That's what is the difference. There's no big difference between an 8-car a month person and a 30-car a month person when they're with a client. There's some subtle differences, but there's massive differences between them when they're not in front of a person. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You sit down and do the math. Think about it. I mean, if the associate is very, very slow in a process, if he has 2 leads that actually select the vehicle, there's 4 hours out in the day. If he's scheduled 10 hours, what's he doing with the other 6?
My point.
Yeah, I mean that's where the money's at.
Well, the money is.
You're 100% right.
So, Michael, what's next? You hear people all the time conjecture and hypothecating about what's coming in the car business. You recently went to the Honda meeting in Las Vegas, and there's one thing we can count on in this business is change. People shouldn't get upset about it or overreact to it, but you should expect it. It's going to happen. And OEMs, are going to make decisions at times that dealers are not going to necessarily agree with, but the OEMs have to answer to their own expectations, their own expenses, their own guidelines, their own stock value, whatever it might be. And when you get into the real world of every day, if you talk to dealers like yourself, they're not so much interested in getting engaged in hypothecating and, hey, where are we going to be technology-wise and all this. They're really thinking about where am I going to be a month, 3 months, and how do I finish the rest of this year? But with that being said, as we look towards the rest of 2024, what's your expectations? Will the back half, for example, do you expect the back half to be more robust in new car sales than the front half? Do you expect more incentives from OEMs, whether it's Honda or others, better or more compelling incentives for clients and for dealers? What is it that you expect to see from now through the end of the year?
No, David, I really don't. I'm going to play the cards that I'm dealt. I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, I'm going to worry about today and then tomorrow and then the next day. I'm going to play the cards that I'm dealt. When I was younger and I was in Pittsburgh and I was single, I played a lot of jet, and I subsidized my income playing jet. And I tell you something, I've won more hands of cards with bad cards than I did with good cards because I just played the player. So I'm just going to play. I'm just going to play the game. Everybody's dealt the same hand. I just got to play my hand better. I just got to make sure that I'm better educated and my team's better educated. And I don't want to sound arrogantly, we've been talking about variable operations here, but let me tell you something. Anybody that's depending on profitability from their variable operations, they're going to set themselves up for a big disappointment. Let me tell you something. When I turn the lights on, I have such a well-oiled fixed operations team that guess what? Every car we make is a plus. We don't depend on that. And you know what? I've been doing this. I've been in the business since 1978. I never had the right inventory. I've been with Oldsmobile and Honda. I've been with Buick. I've been with Jim C. I've been with Pontiac. I've been with Cadillac. I've been with Acura. I've been with Smart. I've been with Lexus. They all had one thing in common. I never had the right inventory that I needed. And so, I learned that I have to become a used car dealer with a new car franchise. I'm blessed. I'm a used car dealer with a Honda franchise. And I've got a great fixed operations department that we take such good care of our clients. And you did an article, the difference between a customer client, touche, spot on. A customer is somebody that buys a commodity from you. A client is somebody you have a fiduciary responsibility to service for life. And, we are part of a big group. We're close to 200 dealerships in our group. I think we might be like the 23rd largest volume dealer in the group, but we have like the third or fourth largest clientele in our database because we built a fortress around it. And we're in constant contact with them. They're like family. And and you can go into my website. Don't take my word for it. We won every CSI award there is to have. Dealer raters, cars.com, et cetera, ad nauseum, because that's the secret. And I told you early on, how do I get what I want? By helping other people get what they want.
Oh,
You've been to my store. I've got a sign hanging in my customer lounge, and it has a smiley face on it and a sad face on it. It says, if you're completely satisfied, tell your friends and relatives. If you're not completely satisfied, call me. I have my cell phone number on there, and my clients can call me anytime they want. I'll be at home on the couch, and I'll get a call at 10:30, and I know it's a client because I'll say, good evening, Mike Porro speaking, and there'll be dead silence. I know it's a client, so they'll say, good evening. Thank you for going on the road. Michael Porro speaking, and it'll be a client. And it's like, you know what? I have a money-back guarantee. Most dealers are afraid to do that, but why would I want an unsatisfied client in one of my vehicles? Why? Why not just do the next right thing?
Love it. Love it. I was going to ask you as a final question, and I think you just served that up for people so beautifully. But I was going to ask you, if any dealer or dealer associate was to spend one day in your store, what would they walk away? The one big thought, what would they walk away going, man, this is really what sets them apart, or this is something that surprised me, or this is something that makes them different, or is a cut above other stores? And I think, you said one of those things. One of them is, hey, if you're not satisfied, we'll give you your money back. Hey,
yeah.
If you're not satisfied, call me, call my cell. There's a lot of dealers that won't take a phone call from a customer, unfortunately, and maybe they're busy, you got other businesses. I get it. But the reality is that, if we're not willing to put ourselves front and center, I always admired Michael Bloomberg for the gigantic company he had, and he put everybody on an open floor in New York City, and his desk sat right in the middle. He had no walls in his office. He was smack in the middle of the entire company. And that's quite a statement, isn't it? Because, hey, you understand.
David, I'm going to move the calendar for a second. You see where my office is, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Right on the show floor. I know it well. Right next to the sales office.
When I remodeled this place, my partner said, you have the smallest office out of all my partners. And I said to him, well, sir, I said, there's only one executive in this organization. That's you. And I'll tell you what, he bellied up to me. He said, hey, I'm not an executive. And and I tell you something, I guarantee he's probably the only owner-operator that could come into a store, any store, and run the desk, take a TO, hold a sales meeting, and then people wonder, well, geez, why is this guy who he is? Yeah, but it's
Talking about Terry?
yes.
Terry Taylor, the great Terry Taylor. I agree with you.
I'll tell you, best partner in the world. I mean, let me tell you something. Anything that you need to make your operation work, you got it.
Yeah.
And brilliant man.
And him and Steve Shanuda and the rest of the executive team.
Oh, Steve Terry, Steve Shanuda, two of the most brilliant guys.
They really.
I try. I do my very, very best to get together with them when they come to town. I'll call Terry up, say, Steve, you can come see me, and he'll tell me I'm not doing bad enough. And then he's a brilliant guy. And I read a book many years ago called Strength-Based Management, and he and I will go back and forth on that. See, I truly believe that I could take a good operator and make them great, versus taking a bad operator and make them good. So I believe in strength-based management. But I'm very blessed. I tell you what, when I partnered up with Terry, it was better than hitting the lottery.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great note to wrap up on. I agree with you. I'm extraordinarily blessed to have met you, Michael, and to have an opportunity to be able to visit your team, work with your team. They're a group of extraordinary men and women, and it's no surprise when you have leadership like yourself. And I will tell everybody listening, every single morning I get an email from Michael, the very same one he sends out to his employees, that is all about getting better every day. He mentioned it. By the way, if you didn't know this, for those of you listening, if you commit to getting 1% better today, 1% better tomorrow, 1% better the next day, if you started that on the 1st of January, you would be 37 times better by December 31st. It's not the big things, it's the little things, whether it's good times or bad times. And Michael, you have not failed to deliver. You've delivered it in such a big way. I'm ever grateful.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure, David, and it's a true pleasure having you as a mentor. And I think I told you one time down in Louisville, the only way you're going to get where me is if you get a restraining order.
I will advise such to know.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Wonderful to speak with you. Wishing you all the best. And for all of those that are listening, that have taken the time to listen, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I sincerely hope that you've gotten great value out of this. If you've enjoyed it, if you learned just 1, 2, 3 things, please take the time to share it to somebody. It will make a difference in their life. Please also subscribe, download, and if you feel up to it, leave a review, good, bad, or ugly. I love them all because I learned from them all. Thanks again for joining. Look forward to seeing you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks so much.